That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. This week I was honored to speak as a faith leader at the 20th year Katrina commemoration, and it was quite an event. Alice and I were commiserating about the getting down there Friday morning. It was south of Waveland at the Methodist Retreat Center down there, and it was raining a little bit that morning, and of course it was dark because we needed to be there at 5:30 a.m. And so it was a little odd getting there, but once you got there, it was just a beautiful experience, and the things the other faith leaders had to say, it was powerful. It brought back some memories for me, of course, during that first year, and then those first few months of how what an experience it was. Just what an odd experience it was at times. I remember just as I was sitting there waiting to speak, I was thinking of the time we were fortunate enough to have a house that had received like 8 feet of water downstairs, but it was being repaired while we lived upstairs like it was an apartment. So we were pretty fortunate compared to others that were either trying to live in tents or in facilities that did not have enough of anything. Hot, no air conditioning, no nothing. So we considered ourselves very fortunate. It was a harsh environment. It was difficult not to be depressed. I was standing out on the corner from our house one morning there in Bay St. Louis and just, looking at the heaps of debris from, you either had a slab or a shell of a house was the way it was. There was no in-betweens. And so people couldn't decide if they were luckier to have a slab and it was all washed away or to try to rebuild that shell. And so there were so many helpers, though, so many helpers, all the helpers. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. And of course, that's why we were there, was that we were coming to establish a Unity Center. And then Katrina happened. But we were still one of the helpers. And my husband was rebuilding houses. He was clearing out debris, doing everything we could. But I remember that one morning I was standing there by probably an 12-foot pile of debris right there at the side of our property. And I was standing out beside the driveway, I don't know what I was doing. I was just standing there gazing off into something. And the Red Cross truck was coming through bringing food for people. And isn't that a wonderful thing? All these volunteers that were bringing food. And he stopped and was trying to hand me a container with food. And I said, oh, no. We're not one of the victims. We're here to help. And he said, well, ma'am, you still have to eat. There's a lesson in that somewhere, and I'm going to get to that in another time, not today, because I already have enough to say today, and I don't want to keep you too long. And then another one was our neighbor across the street, Mr. Maurice, and he said, keep your light on, Judy, because we were the only houses on that street that had someone inhabiting it. And he said, please keep your light on. And I think of that often. He's passed on now, but I think of him often about keep that light on and how important it was in the dark. And that's basically what it was. And then another thing that's sort of tied in, and this would be a negative, but when Dan and I were driving back from the West Coast from Jonna's wedding, and we were making a quick trip of it, but one night we were still in the Midwest somewhere, he was driving 850 miles a day, and we were doing the best we could to get home. We had commitments here and other things going on that we just needed to get home. So we stopped at we thought it was a good stopping place, and I don't even remember which state it was. It doesn't matter, but we went in a reasonable hotel. Not one that he would get on his own, trust me. If he's traveling, he and his fellow equipment, these guys that restore equipment, they'll spend zillions of dollars on restoring this old equipment, and then they'll go to the cheapest hotel and try to get a $49 room or something. So he knows if I'm with him, we're not doing that, okay? A little bit different standards. I don't want the most expensive, but I just want something. I know the sheets are clean, okay? And the bathroom has been cleaned. But so we stopped at this place, looked reasonable. We go in and ask about a room for the night, and the board receptionist, she's who was tasked with telling people that didn't know, oh, well, it's $349 tonight. Like, what? You've got to be kidding. No, she says, don't you know? The rodeo's in town for this weekend. And I didn't say anything to her because I know how it is for the receptionist getting angry people giving retort back to them. Honey, they can't do anything about it. There is no need. And you're singing to the choir when you're complaining to them. So don't do it. Don't do it. We didn't, but when we got back in the truck, Dan said, well, what are we going to do now? I said, well, we're going to go someplace where it's a little more reasonable than that. I'm not paying $350 a night just because you stopped at a little town where people believe it's okay to gouge you. Do you know what that means? We saw a little bit, that reminded me too, of just a little bit after Katrina and every other disaster too. You've got all the helpers, all the wonderful people, and then you got other people, they're going to do whatever they can to raise the price on whatever it is, because they're going to gouge you, and they're going to make money out of you. And that's sort of what they were doing there with that mentality. Charge the same thing you would charge last weekend or next weekend. Don't do like they tell you to do whatever the market bears. That's not right. That's not spiritual. That's not a spiritual thing to do. And what it tells me immediately, and like people that will have a disaster and they're going to charge you $2 for a bottle of water. For Pete's sake, go give those people some water. It's the worst time in the world to gouge somebody. The worst ever time. And there were a few of those. But more than anything, and this is what I want to tell you this morning, more than anything, it says, that tells me a lot about you. I see. You don't understand the laws of the universe, do you? And they don't. Anybody that's trying to do that wherever they are and they're trying to gouge you or they're trying to be cheap or greedy or selfish or whatever, they don't understand the laws of the universe. They haven't figured that out yet. But they will, hopefully. And so it tells you a lot about them. Do you hate them? No. You might even have compassion for them and pray for them. And I hope you have an understanding of the spiritual laws before you leave this earth. Because you know what? You're going to get to do it again. That's the beauty of this system, isn't it? So we're going to talk a little bit more about those spiritual laws. And last week I spoke about a great power that we have, and that is our curiosity. And curiosity is one of our superpowers. And we even talked about several people that we know of, all of the people, the explorers, the discoverers, whether it was in medicine or the earth and wanting to find out what's on the other side of the globe. All of those people, it was innate curiosity that guided them on, wasn't it? It was their innate curiosity. But you also might run into people that, and I told you too, when I grew up in a family that didn't really encourage your curiosity. They just wanted you to work hard and save your money. And those are good things to do too. So combined with my husband, he grew up in a family. His father was a civil engineer, and he actually even worked on the Golden Gate Bridge, the George Washington Bridge in Brooklyn. He did some really creative, innovative things. And so my husband's father, although he had not had that encouragement as a child, whatever reason, he decided to encourage his kids to be creative and curious. He encouraged that in them, which was a wonderful thing. So together, I kind of toned down his creativity and his imagination and those things, and then he encourages me to have a little more courage and go out into the world sometimes and be a little more curious. So I guess over the decades, it's worked out pretty well. Except when he wants to stop at a cheap hotel, and I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about curiosity today before I go on next week to talk a little bit more about our wisdom and understanding that are our innate powers. One of the co-founders, Charles Fillmore, wrote a book titled The 12 Powers, and in it there are 12 listed. And if we take them today in contemporary language, we might change the language a little bit. We might even combine some of them. We might talk about it a little differently, but they're basically pretty solid, pretty solid. He talks about wisdom, imagination, and understanding. And if I'm remembering, enthusiasm is one where he said that enthusiasm, like curiosity, needs to be tempered sometimes with our wisdom and understanding. Okay? So that's what I was on to today, was to temper what I said last week just a little bit before we go on. How many of you have ever been impulsive with a decision? Anybody? Have you? I think Tammy's saying she's the poster child for. Okay, we all have at one point or another. Yeah, don't slap yourself, Charles. We all do it. Yeah, he's holding his hands under his armpits. Sometimes our curiosity needs to be tempered by discernment, trust, and patience. And when guided by our spiritual intention, curiosity becomes a sacred tool rather than a restless wanderer. We've all known people, haven't we, that just needed to temper their impulsiveness. Sometimes they're like, oh, I'm going to reach out and do this. I'm going to reach out and do that. I remember a friend called Dan a couple of years ago and knows that he watches over the finances and the investments, and he really, really studies it, and he's really good at it too. And they were telling him a stock he ought to invest in, and it was one where you could buy a hotel in a virtual reality. And I can't remember exactly what it was like, but it's not AI. It's something, we were talking about AI this morning, and I know that's one thing. But this was where people were actually investing in a house or a hotel or a street or something in a virtual reality, and then they were buying all the furniture for it, and this person was all impulsive about it and just all into it. Somebody had encouraged them. They thought it was a wonderful thing to do. We talked about it a little bit later, and Dan said, man, that's something where people are going to spend a lot of money and waste it if they're into that. So I hope that's not something any of you would do. Don't invest in anything like that. I remember when the kids were little, and we lived next door, of course, and I have a practice of interfering in my kids' lives. And I told poor Donica when she moved down here, I said, now, you know, you're my great niece now, and we just need to be aware of this. I have a tendency to insert myself into your life, but I'll try not to. I'll try to behave. But I'd gone over to the kids' house because they lived right behind us there in Bay St. Louis. They had moved over too. They waited a couple of years after Katrina to move over, and I was over there, and a couple of neighbors come walking up to Sherry, and they're all serious and angry. They want to have a conversation. Well, it turns out their little girl was a really good friend with Sherry's son, Andy, and he was playing with some of these toys. Oh, now I can't remember what you call it. What? Minecraft. Okay. And they were playing a game together, and I guess he got out of control and burned her virtual house down. And so she apparently was just all upset about it and screaming and crying, and went to her parents. So they came over to have it out with Sherry and Al about Andy burning this girl's virtual house down on Minecraft. Anyway, I was there. I observed it. I saw every moment of it. I was standing in the kitchen watching as they were discussing this, and I could hardly believe it. I thought, now, wait a minute. There's something crazy about this, and you're not teaching this girl a thing. You know, they were really upset, and they never, ever came back to be friends. That ended friendships right there. Adults and children ended the friendship. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? It sort of reminds you of whatever's been going on in the universe the last week or two about the Cracker Barrel logo. Who cares? Who cares? As long as I can go and get good chicken and dumplings there, I don't care, okay? Like I said earlier, what does it tell you? No need to get upset about it. It just tells you about these people don't understand the laws of the universe yet, do they? There's so many things that people care about that they shouldn't. But now I'm off track. Name the impulse. If you feel the urge to complain to Cracker Barrel because they changed their logo, just don't, okay? Or as Dr. Phil would say, stop. Just don't. And if you are an impulsive person, here's something you really, really, really need to do, and that is to create a sacred delay. Delay long enough. Build a ritual of waiting. Write it down. Sleep on it. Don't let anybody encourage you to do anything urgently. That's what scam artists are into, you know. That's what they play on. They give an urgent, you've got to do this right now. You've got to do this right now. I'm just about to lose everything I have, and you've got to do this right now. You've got to go to the bank. You've got to go buy a gift card. You've got to do this or the other. And that somebody, and by the way, they sure don't understand the laws of the universe, do they? What goes around comes around. And okay, don't allow anybody to create any urgency in you unless there's a medical emergency and you need to act. Do something then. If you see a child going in the street, that's urgent. Do something then. If you've got an impulse, that's the time to work on an impulse, okay? But not because somebody else out there. The reason I know is I had somebody do that to me this week by email that sent me an email from a distant cousin, and I hadn't heard from her in a long, long time. She lives in Memphis, and I thought, why in the world is she reaching out to me? And so I clicked on it, and the email said, I need to have a conversation with you, but I have laryngitis. Could I just ask you something? And so the next one, of course, I said, well, yes. Then the next one, of course, is where she says, oh, I just got an urgent need. Could you run to the store and get a $300 gift certificate, it says. Of course, it wasn't her. Of course, it wasn't her. That's when I caught on. Oh, and you need to do this quickly because I need it. Yeah. And so don't fall for that, folks. I guess that's the reason it's on my mind, is because that was just so recent, and how people that don't understand the laws of the universe will use you. Okay, so using all of our senses, and if you'll look up a definition for common sense, I know that you'll hear an old term, don't check your brain at the door, and a lot of times that'll be derogatory for people that are going into a faith, a cathedral, a church, or wherever, and that's pretty derogatory. We don't want to use that here. We don't want to check our brains at any door, is what that meant. And it meant, what it really means is, and they're trying to say, use your common sense. Well, what is your common sense? That's all your natural senses. Those are all of your natural senses. Your sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, and the wisdom within the moment that's innate. Those are the things we want to feel, and the powers we want to use if we want to employ our curiosity, or creativity, or compassion, reaching out to help others, empowering ourselves in our own lives, and helping to empower others. Use your senses if you're trying to make a decision. You might imagine yourself standing by the sea. You see the horizon, that's the sight. Hear the waves, that's what the sound. Feel the breeze, the touch. Smell the salt, taste the air. And then you sense this innate wisdom right here. Maybe the prefrontal cortex here, as it connects with the heart. And that, my dear, we call divine wisdom. And you might even touch those places if you're going to be impulsive and do something that you want to bring all of your senses here. All of your senses. I want to bring them in. You might even touch yourself right here to bring your prefrontal cortex into this decision and this decision here in the heart center. We want to use all of our powers of discernment, all the powers that have been given to us by the Creator, to make our lives better, richer, fuller. I thank you for coming here today. And I thank you for your time.